The reality is that there is climate change, and it is happening now, and we are experiencing it, and we can see it.
The United States produces the best climate science in the world. And yet, and this is the ironic part, as a whole, the U.S. has less trust in those data than the rest of the world.
Many scientists have spent their careers just learning about the facts. And to ignore what we have discovered?
There has been an anti-science, anti-intellectual movement that has blossomed.
There's not a miner here that's not an environmentalist. So when people say that we don't want to do the right thing, there's a balance between the environment and economy. These miners will be the first ones to tell you. They're out in the woods, they're hunting, they're fishing, they're doing everything possible.
I think that if you were to go to a doctor and they told you you had a particular diagnosis, you want to be skeptical. You want to go to the second doctor, the third doctor, and get some opinions. And with climate science, it's like you checked thousands of doctors, and they keep telling you the same thing.
We have these systems in place that allow independent science to inform how our government makes decisions.
Scientists need to be free to conduct their research free of interference and harassment.
That whole system is under attack. We're seeing Congress and we're seeing the Trump administration take steps to try to dismantle that very process by which we use science.
One thing that really frustrates me is that we've paid for the science, we have the answers, and people aren't listening. And that makes me say, why aren't we listening?
There's a well-funded group paid for by fossil fuel interests who have run a decades-long disinformation campaign based on the playbook of the tobacco industry. When the tobacco industry said that smoking didn't cause cancer, they have used these same tactics as a means of casting doubt on the settled science of climate change.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive. I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
And I too believe that nicotine is not addictive.
The science was understood decades before we had the Surgeon General telling the public in the United States that smoking is dangerous to your health. That's unconscionable to me.
It seems to be an attempt to remove basic scientific capability from agencies like EPA or NOAA or NASA.
We're hearing from scientists within the government that they're very concerned, they're very scared right now.
Some people want to have their own facts to serve their own purposes, and that's what we're dealing with here.
I think we're likely to see really devastating impacts on the scientific enterprise in this country.
Any democracy, any policymaker, any business leader needs to operate under the conditions of understanding the latest evidence.
Many of these companies have what are called shadow prices, so they already plan for the impacts of climate change in their corporate planning, in their business plans, because they know it is real. And companies that have what's called a proxy carbon price or a shadow carbon price would include companies like ExxonMobil.
So one thing we have in Alaska and Siberia is vast tracts of frozen soil, carbon.
The Arctic is warming faster than any other part of the planet.
It starts to degrade, bacteria can get in it, and then it will release its carbon into the atmosphere, either in the form of methane or carbon dioxide.
Once things begin to change in the Arctic, then the Arctic itself begins to cause climate change.
The frozen ground in the northern regions carry about twice the carbon dioxide that's currently in the atmosphere.
Every year we're crossing a new line.
We're going to struggle very hard to stay away from what's called the 2 degree centigrade mark. That's the mark at which we've all identified as dangerous anthropogenic global warming.
The public has a right to know about our changing climate, where we are, what the impacts are, and what we can do about it.
What gives me hope is that it, in fact, is because of us. And that means we can turn this around, and we do not have to go down the worst path. But it's really narrowing the window of opportunity.
Humans need to evolve. And if we, as a planet, can evolve to where we're able to control greenhouse gas emissions and prevent runaway global warming, I think it will show that we as a species have evolved away from regionalism, away from nationalism, and towards a cleaner planet that all of us can live on for many centuries to come.
It's like we're in a fog. We think this is the only way we could live. In fact, it's going to be much better once we seize the renewable energy, geothermal, wave energy, wind energy, harnessing the sun.
There is a trillion-dollar market opportunity, multi-trillion-dollar market opportunity that is being lost by those who block progress on clean energy technologies. We have known for decades that climate change is causing global warming and that there will be devastating effects from that. There's no real argument among scientists, among virtually every other government other than the United States, that that is the case. And we have an opportunity now to change that path, and we have not taken that. A small cadre of people funded by the fossil fuel industry have managed to cast doubt upon the settled science of climate change and to obstruct and block progress. That obstruction will have consequences that we will suffer for decades and maybe even centuries to come. That's extremely frustrating.